governor of Georgia leaning forward, the governor of Florida leaning forward, the governor of Texas a bit more cautious but beginning to open up. Listen to the governor of New York saying, be careful.
I get the pressure, but we can't make a bad decision. Frankly, this is no time to act stupidly. Period. I don't know how else to say it. And I've said it innumerable times to local officials on the phone. I get the pressure. I get the politics. We can't make a bad decision, and we can't be stupid about it.
That's one take of it, Dana. He said it over and over and over again in similar words, saying, if we are reckless, things will go up. He's not just talking about the state of New York. He knows he has a national platform here.
No, absolutely. And there's no question without, as you said, without saying the names or the states, this was a direct contrast, intentional contrast that he was making with the governor of Georgia and the governor of Florida, who are saying it's okay to open by the end of the week tattoo parlors and nail salons, where it's impossible for anybody to understand how those are doable with social distancing measures in place. And so he's very keenly aware of, as you said, the platform he has, of the voice he has right now, particularly given how bad it has been in New York, that it has been such a hot spot. But the other thing that I found interesting in his presentation and in the temperament of Andrew Cuomo is that he takes people along and allows people to see that it isn't easy. He's not just saying, no, we're not going to do this. He did say it's stupid and you should be careful, but he's also being very transparent in how difficult it is. And when it comes to leadership, that makes it easier to digest for people. If you see that even he is struggling, that it is a hard decision to keep things in place, it's a tactic that certainly could work for him and maybe could be emulated by people in the White House, even if it's not the president, perhaps his top medical people who were asked questions and were, very diplomatic, almost to a fault, when asked about these states yesterday.
Right. And Sanjay, to that point, you live in Georgia where the governor has been quite aggressive. He says he's going to put his foot on the pedal to reopen. The governor of Florida moving forward, as Dana said. Some other governors a bit more slowly. Even as Governor Cuomo was speaking, he's a politician, so maybe people are watching saying he's a Democrat. He just wants to pick fight with Republican governors. Even as he was speaking, the IHME, which is one of the modelers out at the University of Washington, a model often cited by the White House, came out with a new analysis that essentially, like Governor Cuomo says, hey, governors, you better be careful here, right?
Yes, very much so. I mean, these are models, so, we dig into these models and the models do change. But what they're saying, for example, for Georgia, is that it really needs to, the reopening really can't be considered until the middle of June. And it's actually 4 days later now than it was before. And again, these models do bounce around. The point is that it's nowhere close. In the past, it was, beginning of June, perhaps, end of May, but now it's even further along. And frankly, as you look at this map here, a lot of places around the country, the model suggesting should be delayed in terms of the reopening. I should emphasize this point, John, because whenever we look at the data and we say, well, the downward trajectory or whatever's happening, it gives us some comfort in starting to think about reopening it. The models also say yes, but the reason we can say that these numbers are going down and what the assumption is that the stay-at-home orders will stay in place to a certain time. There's always that assumption that you will continue to have the stay-at-home orders and the belief that if you start to reduce them, the numbers will go up. And John, one more point. This is a little bit more of a subjective thing, but when the stay-at-home orders start to get opened up, like, for example, if they start to happen here in Georgia on Friday, there are people who are going to become infected. The governor has acknowledged this. But we may not recognize those infections for a period of time because, as you know, the incubation period can be a couple of weeks, sometimes shorter. But the point is that for a while, for a couple of weeks, people may say, hey, look, we're fine. Georgia's fine. We don't see any impact from having reopened. And then you wait a couple of weeks and you start to see people starting to become symptomatic. You wait another week after that, people start coming to the hospital. And sadly, a week after that, if people are going to die, it happens then. So you're talking about a month down the line. You have to have the patience here. We close late and now we're thinking about reopening early. That's a problem here in Georgia.
Right. It'll be 2-3 weeks, maybe even more, before we begin to see, and maybe they pull it off, and maybe they handle it right. And if so, we'll give them credit. If the case numbers go up, we'll have more political controversy. Dr. Phillips, I want you to come into the conversation to the point Dana was making, and Sanjay too, about the complexity of this. You have to do this with your patients every day. They come in with certain conditions, and you need to talk them through it. Here's option A. Here's how long it will take. Here's option B. Here's how long it will take. Here's the potential side effects. Here's the course going ahead. When you listen to Governor Cuomo, to Dana's point, he's talking about all of these challenges, including the complexity of this contact tracing army. He says they have hundreds now, if you look at New York City and the surrounding counties, but they need thousands. He's grateful for the new help of Mayor Bloomberg. But when you hear him talk this through, do you get a sense that we're having that? Again, he has a national platform. But when you listen to the White House, the president often says America was not meant to be closed. We must reopen. He does not get into the nuance, the complexity, the months-long challenge, and then the manpower, the coordination, all of the things necessary to pull this off.
It's the problem with us not having a national strategy set by the White House. You allude to the contact tracing, which has been made readily apparent its importance. You know, the Center for Health Security at the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, they released those guidelines last week that had recommended up to 100,000 people might be needed in the public health service to be able to do the level of contact tracing that's necessary. And I think that served as a primer for the conversation that we're having now. Mr. Bloomberg is a part of that school, and his idea of funding it, I think, is very important. We're not going to be able to get the majority of the country back open in any safe way without expanding testing and, in particular, contact tracing. And notably, amongst the lack of planning from the White House, even their guidelines and their gateways to reopen the country leave out contact tracing as a requirement for states. And what we're seeing from some of the southern states, and gosh, in particular, the mayor of Las Vegas, in her words, I find it frightening. I mean, medically, it's maddening to see this sort of counterproductive movement towards opening the country up without truly considering the medical problems that can come from that. So I'm wondering who's advising them from a medical standpoint, or are they just not taking that advice from physicians and epidemiologists?
It's a fascinating question because we are at this crossroads moment. Like it or not, agree or not with your mayor, your governor, you're starting to see this in pockets of the country. To Sanjay's point, we will track it as we go ahead to see whether they can pull this off successfully or whether there are major setbacks. Dr. Phillips, Dr. Gupta, Dana Besh, appreciate very much your perspective. As we listen to that, again, it's a competition. It's a competition. Governor Cuomo trying to take a lead role in the go slow debate as other governors and the President of the United States are in the go debate. We will watch as this one plays out. Up next for us, Twitter diplomacy. President Trump tweets he will soon sign a new immigration executive order, that after announcing that plan earlier, also in a tweet. We'll look at what's inside in a minute.